Pretend for a moment that you're traveling to Tehran with your brother. You're enjoying your trip and you're seeing the capital, then you're arrested. The world doesn't know what happens to you, and 3 days later you are dead in the hospital. You died in a coma, and your autopsy shows extreme head trauma and brain injury, meaning that you were probably beaten. Your crime? Being a woman in Iran.
Hello, I'm Miley, and this is a video about the Mahsa Amini Protests and contemporary women's rights movement in Iran.
If you've been paying any attention to these protests, you've probably heard the phrase Jin Jayan Azadi in Kurdish, or Zan Zindagi Azadi in Farsi, woman, life, freedom. This has been the mantra of Iranian women for decades, because for women in Iran, life and freedom don't come easily. They live without something that many people in the world take fully for granted: bodily autonomy. Even as other countries tighten restrictions on women, like in the US, we still have a fairly large degree of bodily autonomy, as in control and choice over yourself and your body, for the most part. In Iran, women do not have even the most basic of choices: their clothing. In Iran, women must wear a hijab or another form of religious head covering. If they disobey, the consequences can be extreme. The story I told at the beginning was the story of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old woman killed in Iran on September 16, 2022, after being arrested for wearing her hijab improperly, as in it wasn't covering all of her hair. Her story is extremely reflective of the general state of women's rights in Iran. The government of Iran is led by a supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, a religious traditionalist who bolstered the abilities of Mahsa Amini's killers, the Iranian morality police or guidance control. Because of him, women can be fined, lashed, arrested, beaten, or killed if the morality police decide they aren't wearing the hijab correctly, like Mahsa Amini. Her death was a sparking moment for a series of ongoing protests throughout Iran and the world. Women are fed up with the way the Islamic Republic has treated them since its founding. The government of Iran has violated human rights in a number of ways, but the violation of women's basic bodily autonomy is the main driving force behind these protests. In response, the police force have met protesters with nothing but brutality and violence. According to NPR, more than 19,000 people have been arrested and more than 500 people have been killed by authorities violently suppressing demonstrations in Iran. These protests and demonstrations are mainly women-led, as you can see in this photo taken in September 2022. The crowd is mostly women, but there are a few men as well. In this photo, none of the women are following the mandatory dress code, as in none of them are wearing hijab or quote-unquote modest clothing. This is extremely important, as all of them are committing a crime just by doing that. Wearing the clothes they want to wear is an act of protest, and on top of that, the young woman in the front is burning her hijab. This is not only illegal, but punishable with a public lashing, among other things. A young woman has just died because she wasn't wearing her hijab properly, and they have set that symbol on fire. This photo captures an act of bravery. She could die for this. Taking off the hijab is an important form of protest since the law was put into place. One notable Iranian activist was Vida Moaved, who took off her hijab in protest in 2017, and she was arrested. Taking off the hijab shows that they are not complying with the laws that have taken away their control. It is, in a way, taking the control back. I think that the most important question these protests raise is, how did this happen? What creates a situation where a government can completely strip a group of people of their rights? In Iran, it was 1978 and the people were fed up. For the last 50 years, the government has been a monarchy run by the Pahlavis, Reza Shah Pahlavi and Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, otherwise known as the Shah of Iran. The Shah's government was in the process of westernization and trying to purge the country of Islamic tradition, including the hijab. Police force was used violently and laws were oppressive, so people rallied around a religious leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, and revolted. The 1979 Islamic Revolution created the Islamic Republic of Iran, led by Khomeini. During the Pahlavi era, women had a larger degree of bodily autonomy, with some personal and financial freedoms. When Khomeini took control, he removed those freedoms. In 1983, he officially mandated a restrictive dress code for all women and took away basically all of the rights they had won during the Pahlavi era. Violence against women also increased from civilians and police forces. Then there were protests against the dress code. Many of the women who fought in the Islamic Revolution now protested Khomeini's restrictive laws. This spurred a new police force. In the 90s, the new and current leader of the Islamic Republic, Ali Khamenei, bolstered the police force whose entire purpose was police women for their clothing, the morality police. They were given extreme power over the public and are responsible for the assaults and deaths of many Iranian women. Women have continued to protest in Iran for almost 45 years, though the most recent protests have been supported the most by international communities, giving them the opportunity for real change. Iranian women and other citizens are extremely brave. They are protesting for their rights in the face of death, and they need support. True change can start with one person or one group, but is not sustainable if they are the only ones fighting for it. Many of the hard-won rights in the US were not only fought for by the marginalized group that was demanding equality, but also by many groups coming together united, which is where we come in. There are many easy ways to lend your support to this cause, the most important being protest, which for people in Iran is extremely dangerous. For us here in America, we can show solidarity with Iranian protests by engaging in our own. There have been protests in LA and all over the world, ranging from teeny tiny roadside to upwards of 50,000 people. There are also a lot of organizations that are helping if you don't want to get involved personally. One of them is the National Council of Resistance Iran, NCRI, Women's Committee. They are a group of educators and political activists that are doing extremely important work for the women in Iran. They go to international and national meetings and lead protests within Iran. Supporting groups like this one through donations and following their causes greatly supports women in Iran. Another easy way to help is to follow activists on social media. There are many Iranian political activists that help with education and outreach in Iran and around the world. Some important Iranian activists are Elka Laban, Golshifta Farhani, Middle East Matters, Masi Alinjad, and Nazanin Bonadi, among others. Now, I know that you may not be a woman or a member of the Iranian diaspora or a member of any other group that might feel a personal connection to this issue, but that doesn't matter. You should feel connected because bodily autonomy is the most basic right. Being able to choose what happens to your own body, your person, is something that must be universal, but it's not. Tensions from decades of oppression are erupting right now in Iran, and they need all the help they can get. If you were fighting, you would not want to be alone, and you would not want to be forgotten.
The protests aren't in the news cycle anymore, but they are still happening. People are still being arrested and people are still being executed, and we cannot let the government of Iran think that we've forgotten that. We can't let the women of Iran think that. The most important thing is to stay educated. Whether that's looking at activists on Instagram, doing your own research, or following campaigns and organizations, you have to keep paying attention. We cannot forget the women and people in Iran fighting for their rights, for their life, and for their freedom. We must show governments that we all deserve life, and we all deserve freedom. Thank you so much for watching. One last thing is that the violation of rights is about the hijab, but not because of. As in, the hijab itself doesn't matter, forced on or taken off. It's about the choice of wearing it. I really hope you don't forget the women of Iran and people all around the world fighting for their rights.